Hey guys, Jay Lai here. I'm going to be talking about the Marshall-Lerner condition and the J-curve, okay? So here we go. When we're looking at the devaluation or depreciation, we're looking at the fall in the value of the currency. Just like we have here in Hong Kong, it's around 7.8 Hong Kong dollars per USD. If it depreciates, let's say to $10 Hong Kongs to USD, then the value of the currency has gone down. Now, when the value of the currency has gone down, what will happen to imports? Imports will become more expensive. The thinking behind this is that people will be reluctant to buy as much imports because it is now more expensive. And exports will become cheaper, okay? And the thinking behind this is that it will boost the amount of exports. People from abroad will be more willing to buy your country's goods and services because it is now cheaper. And for this reason, many countries, they like depreciation or they engage in devaluation because it helps them improve the balance of trade. But the question here is, does it necessarily lead to an improvement in the balance of trade? And the answer to this is no, okay? An emphatic no, okay? A depreciation or devaluation will only lead to an improvement in the balance of trade if the Marshall-Lerner condition is satisfied. So what is this condition? This is represented in this mathematical condition, okay? It is the PED, the price elasticity of demand for imports, plus the price elasticity of exports, and together they must be greater than 1. It is only when the sum of both it adds up to more than 1 that a depreciation or a devaluation will lead to an improvement in the balance of trade. And so just recap here for a second, what is a price elasticity? What is the price elasticity of demand? PED. Price elasticity of demand is defined as the responsiveness of the quantity demanded to a change in price. The change is measured in percentages. So if the PED is greater than 1, demand is price elastic. And if the PED is less than 1, then demand is price inelastic. Okay? This should be very straightforward, and you should remember this from micro. And so if both the PED for imports plus the PED of exports is greater than 1, then you have an improvement in the balance of trade. Elasticities are important because what matters is not the changes in the quantities of imports or exports, okay? But it's actually the values of imports and exports that is important. So what do I mean by this? Let's just step back here for a second. Balance of trade is the value of exports minus the value of imports, okay? When a depreciation occurs, the balance of trade will only improve given that the value of exports increase or the value of imports decrease, okay? It goes down. Because what's happening here is if you want to generate a more positive number, a bigger number for the balance of trade, you want the value of exports to go up and the value of imports to go down, okay? It must go in opposite directions in that manner for balance of trade to increase. And so why is the concept of PED important? So let's just take a look here. The value of exports is equals to price of exports multiplied by the quantity of exports. Now, when you have a devaluation, the price of exports goes down. Now, when the price of exports goes down, do you want there to be a responsive change in the quantity demanded, or do you want to have a non-responsive change? Of course you want a responsive change. You want your goods to sell like hotcakes as soon as the price goes down, right? You want foreign countries to buy them immediately. Therefore, you want it to be elastic, right? On the other hand, if it is an inelastic response, if the quantity doesn't really change, okay, then basically the value of exports will only go up very, very insignificantly. Secondly, let's look at the perspective of the value of imports. A value of imports is the price of imports multiplied by the quantity of imports. When we have a devaluation, okay, so your currency is less valuable, the price of imports will then go up because you require more of your local currency to buy that foreign currency. Okay, and so therefore, if you're the government and you want to improve the balance of trade, do you want people to buy a lot less when the price goes up? Yes, because you want to suppress the value of the imports. So when the prices goes up, you want there to be a huge response in the quantity of imports. Because when the price goes up, you want quantity of imports to drop significantly. The demand for imports to drop significantly. If it doesn't, so price goes up, quantity just stays around the same, then what you have is it might be a case of the value of imports going up, okay, instead of going down. And that's not what you want. So let's look at an example here. So we have the value of the exports is $8,000 and the value of imports is $10,000. The balance of trade is 8,000 minus 10,000, okay, which gives you negative 2,000. So we have a balance of trade deficit here. Okay, so let's look at the impact of currency depreciation on prices. Okay, so let's assume that the exchange rate is $1 to £1. There's a depreciation in the dollar of 5%. And therefore, $1 now, $1 now is equals to 0.95 pounds, okay, or 95 pence. There is a 5% discount. From the perspective of the British shoppers, okay, so here we're looking at those people buying US goods domestically, okay? From here, we're looking at British shoppers abroad who are buying US goods domestically. From their perspective, US exports are now 5% cheaper. What about from the perspective of US buyers? £1 is now $1 over 0.95 pounds, which gives you this big number there, which is 1.05263,158. From the perspective of US buyers, British imports are now 5.26% more expensive. Okay, so let's take a look at what the math looks like. Okay, so a 5% US dollar depreciation has taken place, and I just want to remind ourselves that we're looking from the perspective of the US market. Okay, the US, when they buy things from abroad, they are buying British imports, and similarly, when the people from abroad, the British people in this case, when they buy things from the US, they're buying US exports. And here, let's just remind ourselves, the value of exports before the depreciation is $20 multiplied by 400 gives us $8,000. And remember, we're looking at this from the perspective of the British people buying things from the US, okay, because we're looking at exports. There's a depreciation of 5% in the US dollars, this we already know, and the quantity of exports has increased by 3%. The PD is calculated by the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price, and here we have 3% over negative 5%, which gives us negative 0.6, and because we always look at PED in terms of absolute values, we can treat it as 0.6. And since this is smaller than 1, we know that this is inelastic. And here, this gives us the value of exports after the depreciation. This looks complicated, but this is basically the new price after depreciation multiplied by the new quantity demanded for exports after depreciation, and you multiply them together. So let's look at the price first. Remember, from the perspective of the British buyer, the exports are now 5% cheaper because of the depreciation rate. That's why I have 1 minus 0.05, which gives us 0.95, okay? Multiplied by the old price, which is 20. So for every dollar that they used to buy, it is now only 0.95 pounds, 95p, okay? And so that's why, since the old price is $20, all I'm doing here is applying that discount, okay? Multiplied by 0.95, and it gives us 19 pounds, okay? They used to have to pay 20 pounds for that same good or service because it was a 1-to-1 exchange rate, but now because there's a discount, it is only 19 pounds. It's very straightforward. Multiplied by the new quantity, and this is very simple. Since we already know this, that the quantity of demand for exports has increased by 3%, right? So it's 1.03 multiplied by 400, okay? And whatever this number is, gives us 7,828 pounds. Why is it in pounds? Because we're still looking at this from the perspective of the British buyers. But if we are doing the accounting from the US side, what is the value of exports? We can see that it is $8,240. okay? And how do we get this number? It's 7,828 just reconverted back with the new exchange rate over 0.95 gives us this new number, $8,240. And now I'm very excited because I may have invented a new economic theory, okay? What I've realized, I've played around with this, is regardless of how inelastic the demand for exports is, except in the case of it being zero, any type of depreciation, okay, or devaluation will lead to an increase in the value of exports in the domestic currency. And you can try and play with it here, okay? And I'll just repeat it here. Any type of depreciation will lead to an increase in the value of exports in the local currency, regardless of how inelastic the demand for export is, except in the case of zero. Okay, I may make a video about this later on, but you can just have a think about this. And here, as you can see, the value of exports after the depreciation has improved, okay? It has increased from $8,000 to $8,240. And now let's take a look at this from the import perspective. Remember, the price here is $20 multiplied by 500, which gives you $10,000. Okay, this was the old value of imports. Again, there was a depreciation of 5% in the US dollars, and here I'm giving it to you. Quantity of imports has decreased by 4%. The price elasticity of imports is simply the negative 4% because the imports has gone down by 4% over 5.26%. I have not made a mistake here because remember, the US dollars being 5% cheaper does not mean that the pound is $5 more expensive. You have to do the calculations as I have mentioned previously. It is 5.26% more expensive. Okay, and when we do these numbers, it's negative 0.76, and as we're looking at absolute values, it's 0.76. Once again, it's less than 1, and therefore we have an inelastic demand for imports. And here, this is the mathematical expression for the new value of imports after the depreciation has taken place. Once again, it's the price multiplied by the quantity. The price is now $20 multiplied by the increase in the value of the pounds, okay, which in this case is 5.26%. But here for simplicity, I've shortened this to 5.3% or 0.053. I have to add 1 to it because it is now more expensive. I multiply the two terms together. This gives me the new price multiplied by the new quantity demanded. And since the imports has fallen by 4%, it is now 0.96 multiplied by 500, and I multiply the two terms together and gives me the new import value after depreciation has taken place, which is $10,105, okay, $0.2632. Has the Marshall-Lerner condition been satisfied? Yes, because 0.6 plus 0.76, which is the price elasticity of demand for exports, plus the PED of imports, adds up to more than 1. Okay, and let's look at the new balance of payment. It is the value of exports after depreciation minus the value of imports after depreciation, and gives me negative $1,865.3. Since the Marshall-Lerner condition has been satisfied, I fully expect that the balance of trade has improved. So has it? Let's just take a look. This is the old balance of trade, which is $8,000 minus $10,000 in terms of imports, and gives us negative $2,000. And here, the new balance of trade after the depreciation is negative $1,865.3. And so there is an improvement once we minus the old from the new, and gives us an improvement of $134.7. Okay, and here we can see that the Marshall-Lerner condition has been satisfied and there has been a balance of trade improvement. So here, let's summarize what we've seen. The larger the value of the PED for imports, the larger the fall in the value of the imports, and the greater scope for improving the trade deficit. And this makes sense because what's happening here is that when the price of imports has gone up, we want people to buy a lot less, okay? in order for the value of imports to go significantly down and improve the trade deficit. On the other hand, the larger the value of the PED for exports, the larger the increase in the value of exports and the larger the positive effect on the trade balance. And that also makes sense as well, because as soon as the price of exports goes down, we want people to buy a lot more from abroad, okay? And therefore boosting the value of exports up. It is not necessary for both the PED for exports and the PED for imports to be larger than 1 for depreciation to result in a balance of trade improvement. Only the sum needs to be larger than 1. Now here, just to wrap up, okay, I want to look at something called the J curve. And you can see why I've attached this at the end of the Marshall-Lerner condition, because they are very relevant. What do I see on the graph on the left? Basically, on the one axis, I have the balance of current account, where the positive means that there's a surplus, and when it's negative, there is a deficit. And on the horizontal axis, I have time. What you see here is that at the beginning of time, okay, and here I can tell you that depreciation has taken place, you can see that the balance of trade enters a deficit region before it slowly climbs back up to the positive region. And why is that the case? First of all, we definitely know that if there is a worsening trade balance, that means that the Marshall-Lerner condition has not taken place. The Marshall-Lerner condition has not been satisfied. And why may that be? Number one, it's because of time lags, okay? And consumers are not able to change their consumption habits. But why can't they change their consumption habits? Well, reason number one might be because they cannot find substitutes, okay? And this applies especially to imports. People who are used to buying things from abroad, right? Maybe they're buying toilet rolls from abroad. They might like the texture, right? If the price of the imports goes up because of the depreciation in the local currency, okay, takes place, they may not be able to find appropriate substitutes, and therefore they still buy the same. So the value of imports goes substantially up because not only has a price increase, they're still buying the similar amounts. Second reason is they may not have realized that prices have changed. In economics, especially in the modeling we do, we often assume perfect information. People react instantaneously to information. They know what's going on. But sometimes they may not know that prices have changed. So people who are still buying these expensive imports, they'll continue to do so until one day they're like, hold on, this is more expensive. And people who are buying exports in this country, they wouldn't have realized that the exports are cheaper now. And they haven't had an opportunity to increase their demand for exports. And both of this keeps the value of the exports in the deficit region. Thirdly, people might be bound by trade contracts, right? They cannot reduce their consumption immediately. They may be bound to buy the fixed amount of goods and services, regardless of what the depreciation is. And the implication of all these reasons means that the PED for exports and the PED for imports will be very low, okay? They're very irresponsive, okay? And that's why the Marshall-Lerner condition is not satisfied, and the depreciation will not result in an improvement in the balance of trade in the short term, okay? Because what happens is over time, okay, when they have time to react, okay, when I have time to find substitutes for those toilet rolls, and I don't need to buy them from abroad, okay, I may buy them domestically. Or people from abroad, they suddenly realize that the prices of the goods in this country has gone down, and they will buy more of the exports. And then in that case, the Marshall-Lerner condition will be satisfied. They are responding to the changes in prices, and therefore there will be an improvement in the balance of trade in the long run. So guys, here you have it. Today I've talked about the Marshall-Lerner condition. When a depreciation takes place, it may not necessarily lead to an improvement in the balance of trade. The Marshall-Lerner condition has to be satisfied, and that is the PED for imports and the PED for exports has to both be more than 1. Okay, the sum of the PED for exports and the PED for imports must add up to more than 1. And we have also looked at the J curve. When the depreciation has taken place, the balance of trade may worsen initially because the Marshall-Lerner condition is not satisfied. And why is it not satisfied? It's because consumers from both domestically and abroad have not had a chance to react to those new prices, and therefore the elasticities for both exports and imports is both going to be low. But over the long term, when they have time to react to the changes in price, the balance of trade will then improve and supposedly increase into the surplus region. And that is why we have a J curve. And all the best till next time. Thank you very much. See you.